Hello, I'm Andrew Kernahan, Head of Public Affairs at the Internet Services Providers Association. Welcome to the latest ISPA Insights feature. With people working from home, streaming services instead of using traditional media, and education, banking and public services being provided online, internet access is increasingly viewed as a utility-like service. But for service providers, it's a challenge to keep up with the explosion in demand for broadband as global supply chains continue to be constrained and project costs soar. How can ISPs navigate around the supply chain crunch, cut lead times and costs for deployment? One answer could be open disaggregated networking. In this video, we take a look at a success story in North America. Alan Fagan, who manages sales for North America at EPS Global, moderates a panel including Jeff Hummel, Technical Services Supervisor, and Nathan Gorenska, Senior Network Engineer, both for MetaLINK, and Vince Schul, Senior Network Architect from ArchiTechs. MetaLINK is a top 20 independent ISP in North America, whereas ArchiTechs is a network consulting firm that focuses on whitebox and open networking integration.
Hi, I'm Alan Fagan and I manage North American sales for EPS Global. We're a value-added distributor with a focus on open networking, and we partner with the best hardware and software manufacturers to build solutions for our customers. We're seeing huge interest at the moment in open networking from service providers, and I'm delighted today to be joined by one of our customers, MetaLINK, and a partner of ours, ArchiTechs. And we're going to talk today about a recent project for MetaLINK that we all collaborated on and that we hope will that valuable lessons can be learned from it. And with that, I'll hand over to Jeff and Nate just to tell us a little bit about MetaLINK.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hummel. Been with MetaLINK for 25 years. MetaLINK is an internet service provider serving Northwest Ohio. Our service footprint extends into Southern Michigan and Northeast Indiana as well. Over the 25 years, we have grown exponentially, and leading up to the project that we're going to be discussing here shortly. Nathan Gorenska, I should say. He is our senior network engineer, and he's been instrumental, along with Vince from ArchiTechs, in getting our project off the ground here and working with Alan and the good folks from EPS. So, Nate, give a little intro.
Nate Gorenska with MetaLINK. As Jeff said, I'm the senior network engineer here. I've been on board with MetaLINK for 16 years now. I've done about every role in the company, from climbing towers for our fixed wireless deployment to doing tech support to deploying equipment, designing networks, and now my role is the senior network engineer here.
Thanks, Nate. And Vince, if you could tell us a little about yourself and a little bit about ArchiTechs and what you guys do.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Alan. My name is Vince Schul. I'm a senior network architect with ArchiTechs. We're an independent consulting firm that specializes in disaggregated solutions. And we don't actually sell any hardware, so we can focus on the business objectives and goals so we can help people realize their return on investment faster.
Thanks, Vince. So getting into the specifics around this project, guys, and Jeff and Nate, whichever one of you wants to take this one. Initially, what problems were you trying to solve? What problems were you having, and how were you trying to solve them?
The main impetus for the coming project, or the project that we've actually been working on, has been the exponential growth that we've had, and the need to essentially get a larger upstream connection to the internet for our clients and ourselves. That led to more and more of a need for larger and larger bandwidth, obviously, and we partnered with a carrier in order to achieve that, and we were given a timeline, and that timeline was very short. And that's where we reached out to ArchiTechs to see, okay, what are the possibilities in this short amount of time? And I can let Nate add to that as well.
Sure. I mean, kind of some of the issues we were facing, we hadn't really considered whitebox at all before we started working with ArchiTechs on this project. We talked to, some of the big players in the game, and, they put forth some designs for us, and everything came with a 12 to 18 month wait. The hardware didn't exist, or it came with these, it didn't exist, and also came with these astronomical price tags to do what we needed to do.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Yeah, I think, you talked about the growth that you've seen and the need for additional bandwidth, Jeff. I think, the last couple of years really has brought home how important broadband is, right? And broadband access with the, pandemic, people working from home. What sort of impact did that have? I mean, did you see a direct impact from that on your business?
Absolutely. Within the first few months of the country going on lockdown, obviously everybody was sent home to do work from home, school from home, etc. We saw a 400% increase within the first 2 months of lockdown in our new orders. So, I mean, over the past 2 years, I could say that, I'd be comfortable in saying we added an additional 10 to 15 gig worth of traffic onto our egress points.
Yeah, I mean, it's broadband has gone, I think, from what would have probably been considered pre-pandemic being somewhat a luxury, something nice to have. It seems like now that it's something that's absolutely essential. It's like having an electricity, right? That you've got to have it.
Absolutely. Our interactions with our customers these days, they treat it just like any other public utility they would.
Right.
I sometimes fear to say that out loud, but probably the writing's on the wall. Eventually we will be that sort of entity. But for the time being, it's just all about getting the best service and most reliable service out to our clients that are providing that demand.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the main drivers then for having you guys approach IP ArchiTechs was lead time, 18 months, which was not going to work, and then the cost. So what did that look like, Vince, when the guys from MetaLINK approached you? What did you think of the issue that they had and how you could resolve it?
Yeah, so they came and, like you said, they had a pretty tight timeline of, hey, we need to get this capacity upgrade in. We're trying to do this within a few months. And we have this specific set of protocols that we need to be able to hit that. So we kind of went to the drawing board and said, okay, what's available that we can get and what can still, deliver the services that they need and allow them to upgrade and achieve that timeline. So, right, we knew we needed BGP, MPLS, we had to deliver layer 2 VPNs, and there's wide suite of whitebox options that meet that requirement. And in the service provider realm, IPM Fusion with their Oknos has a pretty feature-rich deployment to satisfy all those requirements. And then, you guys have really done a great job. You being EPS Global, done a great job of being able to deliver hardware to meet our customers' requirements across the globe. So that was kind of where we led over to you when we said, hey, yeah, this solution, this set of gear, this set of OS, can you deliver it in time to meet the customer's requirement?
Yeah, and I think we engaged with you guys for the first time in December of 2021. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff and Nate, but I believe we had the network deployed by the end of February, or at least part of it. Is that correct?
By the end of February, the switches were showing up at our dock. So it was probably about a month longer. I would say even with working, with people being out for over Christmas, over the holidays, it was about a 3-month time to stand this network up from start to finish. Okay.
So obviously that compares very favorably to the legacy guys that you've been talking to.
Yes, we were hearing lead times and delivery times anywhere from a year to all the way up to 2 years.
So, obviously, judging by that, we were able to solve the lead time issue. From a cost perspective, I think you were able to save a lot of money as well. Were there any other things that, once you got into the open networking space, were there other things that you found out that, pleasant surprises or even nasty surprises, if you want to talk about some of those, but hopefully there was more pleasant than nasty.
I'll throw in the big dog here and then let Nate take it from there. But the licensing is a very different scope than what you might expect from the larger providers that are out there. That was a pleasant surprise for me, and I got to say that I love the flexibility of everything that we're able to accomplish with this. And Nate, if you care to add anything.
Sure. I mean, as far as flexibility, I mean, with IPM Fusion software, we're running the same software or slightly different variations of it across 3 different switch models now, 2 different manufacturers, and it's all the same setup. Now, we have found along the way that not necessarily every switch model has the exact same underlying firmware. There's a couple of different bugs we've hit with one of the models that the other models don't have. But one of the things that when we've hit some of these bugs, the IPI guys have been able to turn around a patch for it, and what I would say record time. I can think of some legacy hardware we've had where we've had bugs that have been, ongoing for, a year or 2 years or still outstanding even. Whereas with these guys, they're like, no, we can work between the whitebox switch and our software to, figure out what's wrong. And, we can get that patched up in pretty short order. So that's been something that's been refreshing to work with on. On the same hand, their support has been a lot easier to engage than I would say some of the legacy guys that we've worked with before, where sometimes you're jumping through, 85 levels of support hell to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, I think that part of that is that, a lesson I learned years ago was always do business with people who your business is important to. And I think for IPI, someone like MetaLINK is a very important customer. It's tougher to be a really important customer for someone like a Cisco or a Juniper or someone at that scale. It's tough to really get the answers. Guys, if you could just tell me a little bit about ultimately what the solution looked like that we came up with. What hardware, what software.
So we were looking to increase our transport links between all of our different core sites. And so we ended up with a solution where originally we had a whole bunch of 10 gigabit DWM circuits that were just lagged together, and it was very difficult to manage. So what we landed on was using primarily the EdgeCore 5916 switch, running IP Fusion software, and then building 100 gig links instead. So that all of our core sites are now interconnected at 100 gigabits per second. And then we can start dropping our whatever circuits we have at those core sites. The 5916s, most of them end up with a few extra 100 gig ports, but then we also ended up with 48 10 gigabit ports. So we can add a whole bunch of 10 gigabit services or ports at 10 gigabit speed at least to the solution, and keep building that transport network up until we get to the point where maybe we go to 200 gigs or 400 gigs or whatever is the best when we hit that next bump in performance.
Yeah, and Nate or Jeff, if I can jump into the technical details a little bit here, then one of the things originally was we're running an ERPS ring, which could be cumbersome to manage, especially as it continues to grow and you try to add new nodes. So, it's like, how do we still deliver those layer 2 services but use routing? And that's where we landed on segment routing to go with that, and delivering EVPN or using EVPN for layer 2 extensions or layer 2 VPN. So we can go and we can kind of simplify the protocol stack and make the operation and maintenance a lot easier and cleaner across the board there, so that it's, you can focus on getting to that next step faster because you have less time spent just doing normal maintenance of kind of the older solutions, right? Of I go and I lag together a whole bunch of DWDM circuits. Now, if I just turn up another routed link and it's in place, it's not this big, long, drawn out process.
Right, and we've put that scenario to the test. After we built our first, we built out a ring that was 12 locations, and we added two spokes to this ring that, with the old solution, would have been a whole bunch of work to do. And in this case, it was, we've written the switch and we had it online, in 10, 15 minutes. It was just a matter of once we did the programming, powering it on. And so we were able to test that pretty well and see that, it's quite the time saver to just drop another switch in somewhere, route it into the same network, and away you go.
Do you have advice for other companies that look like yourselves who are considering open networking? And I'll open that question up for you as well, Vince. I mean, what advice would you give to service providers? Because there's so many service providers that are, faced with the same issues that you guys were faced with last year. Right, having loads more bandwidth to provide, but dealing with the supply chain crunch and how are we going to do this? So, what advice?
I would say for me, the biggest takeaway is don't be afraid to try something new. And Vince kind of helped us to see that just because this is a totally different solution than you're used to. You go to one company, you buy their switch, you buy their software, you buy their support, you buy all their licenses. Whereas with whitebox, it's a little bit different, but don't be afraid to investigate that solution because it could check a lot of boxes for you.
I'd add to that, Vince and ArchiTechs were very instrumental in helping us jump over that hurdle. There's lots of preconceived notions in the industry about you got to have this if you want to play in this arena. For different size companies, that's not even a possibility, right? Like Nate said, don't be afraid. Have a look at it. At the very least, go out and give it a test. It's affordable enough for you to pick up a couple switches and go to town.
That would be, the biggest thing that I would say too is don't be afraid to look. Not everybody has the problems of the tier ones, right? We're not all Lumen and Telia or Airleon, whatever they're called now, right? So that set of equipment and, service provider that's tiered towards the tier ones, that looks very different than what is a very valid and robust solution for the tier twos and regional ISPs, and being able to still deliver that same quality of service deliver it out to their customers without having to go kind of through that same sort of traditional experience that Nate was talking about, where you go to the vendor, you get the support, you get the hardware, you have to wait, and then it's a little different here. But if one switch model doesn't work, right, I can pull from a whole nother set of switch that's on the same silicon. Might be a different manufacturer, but there's other options of what's on the shelf, so I can still go and get that out. So I don't have to wait 18 months to deliver bandwidth. I can do it in 3 to 4 weeks, a month. Once we had their core moved over, it's we're talking weeks to add new switches and new routers, not months or whatever the lead time is on insert vendor here.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing, Vince. And I think, Jeff and Nate, that your experience really shows this, that you're not on your own. And I think that's a fear that some people have when they're entering into the open networking space, that they're on their own, right? That no one really owns this, right? Because the switch comes from somewhere, the software comes from somewhere else. I have to figure this out myself, how to put all this together. That's not the case. If you're working with someone like ArchiTechs who understands the landscape and understands the solutions, and then can work with someone like ourselves at EPS Global, who actually has the inventory on hand, have the switches on hand, have the partnerships with the software companies, can actually deliver, in a very timely manner. You're not on your own. There's help out there, and we're here to help. And I think that's a really important message. This probably sounds like a bit of a dumb question now, having the stage that we're at in the discussion, but would you ever go back to the old way of doing things?
We're still early in it. I can't say that it wouldn't have a necessity in certain places, but given the experience that we've had so far, I honestly don't see a reason we ever would. Going back to what you said about not being alone in this process, the cooperation that we've seen amongst yourselves at EPS, ArchiTechs, and then also even the software developer and the switch manufacturer, it was just amazing to me to see. Nate kind of touched on it earlier. The experience you have with the larger providers, maybe waiting a week or more to even be addressed by their support. In these cases, we immediately had a subject matter expert from the software working directly with the hardware manufacturer, and whenever they needed to get particular information or whatever, Nate was able to work directly with Vince, and that all took place within days. I mean, literally days. And, by the end of those days, we had a solution. To me, it's amazing. So going back on that would be very hard for me to turn tail and say, well, I want to go back to the old way. It's like, no, I've had it better now.
Right. Good. You anything to add to that, Nate?
Not really. I have something back maybe to the previous point about working with IP Infusion. I would say that when they're having these few support things we work through with them, we're working as still a single point of contact. I don't have to contact EdgeCore and say, hey, I've got this problem. And I have to contact IP Infusion and say, I have this problem. I'm working with IP Infusion, and then IP Infusion takes on the task of working with the underlying hardware manufacturer. And so that kind of streamlines that process as well, because you don't have to make a whole bunch of different support tickets to get your issue addressed.
Right. Again, and I think that really speaks to the thing, you're not on your own, right? You're not left alone dangling to figure this out. And I really feel, from talking to customers, that is a concern that they have, particularly if they've been used to the comfort blanket of, like the Cisco service thing that they're, paying huge amounts of money for. But, there's a certain level of comfort with that. And it's I think the advice that you talked about earlier about not being afraid to take that first step, it's really important advice. Give it a try.
Alan, if I could jump in here, I think one of the things we kind of keep touching on here is idea in disaggregated networking that there's not support channels. It's just completely false. I mean, there's not really, I'd say it's almost exactly the opposite, right? Just because it's not bought in the initial, hey, I bought, my service contract in one bomb, I went and I did it, slightly differently, or, it came from here. There's still that level of support and coordination that Nate and Jeff have been talking about throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the proof is in the experience that they've had. So what's next, guys? What's next for MetaLINK?
On to bigger and better, I suppose. As the world of the internet and service providers evolves into what the new reality is, obviously everything is going to be more. It's all about more. For MetaLINK particularly, expanding our fiber networks, and obviously that's going to mean more and bigger packages for our customers, which is going to necessitate the need for a big iron solution to transport all of that and get it out to the internet and get that data back from the internet.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, guys. We talked at the top of this about hoping that there's valuable lessons to be learned from the experience, and I really think there is. I think there's so many companies like yourselves out there. There's so much demand for open networking equipment, and we're here to help. And anyone who's listening to this who wants to find out more, please feel free to reach out to IP Architects, reach out to EPS Global, and we can help you, and we can help you achieve the results that MetaLINK have over the last number of months. So thanks again, guys. Really appreciate the time.